We are embarking on the biggest weekend in BYU football history in a recruiting sense, and we're examining exactly what it will take for the BYU Cougars to land the big fish, like Ryder Lyons.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. I'm Jake Hatch, executive producer of the KSL Sports Zone in Salt Lake City, Utah, and a 13-year credentialed media member at BYU. I am your resident expert and insider on this here podcast. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. New customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. Go to FanDuel.com today to get started. All right, coming up on today's show, we're talking recruiting. BYU hosting a guy like Ryder Lyons, a bona fide five-star prospect. What's going to take to land him? And frankly, what's the importance for the BYU football program if they are to land him? We'll talk about that. Then we'll talk about the recruiting weekend as a whole. Ryder is just the tip of the spear when it comes to the names that are visiting BYU this weekend. A lot of high-level prospects, 4 stars, high 3 stars, and the like. We'll talk about the overall tenor of this weekend and how important it could be for the future of Kalani Sitake and the BYU football program. And then we'll finish up with your questions, our weekly mailbag here on the podcast. So without further ado, let's dive right in. And Ryder Lyons has announced he will be making his commitment known on June 24th. That is Tuesday. That means BYU has the final official visit before he commits and decides where he's going to be playing his collegiate football. I think that is an absolute strategic advantage for BYU to have just that. And we talked with Jeff Hansen not that long ago about the importance of a guy like Ryder Lyons, what he could mean for the BYU football program, and quite frankly, what his commitment could do for Kalani Sitake and company. So here you go. Big weekend ahead for BYU sports, and it's headlined by one guy in particular, and that's Ryder Lyons. He's the 5-star prospect. BYU has not recruited athletes of his caliber very often, especially in recent memory. You can go back and look at the Ben Olsons of the early 2000s, Jake Heaps in 2010, and then it comes to Ryder Lyons really as kind of the top-tier quarterbacks BYU has recruited. Can you give Cougar fans a sense of just the orbit that he is operating in right now in the recruiting sphere?
Yeah, I think the best way to do it, I had somebody ask me, is there any way that BYU football could ever replicate what BYU basketball has done in bringing in an AJ DeBanza?
Okay.
I said, well, yeah, maybe this class. I mean, Ryder's not quite that consensus number one type dude like AJ DeBanza was. He's not far off. A lot of people have him as the top quarterback in the country. He's different. I think a lot of BYU fans, we look at Jake Heaps, and that's kind of the parallel that we have to draw from. But even Jake Heaps I think he was one of the top quarterbacks, but he was rated as like the 150, 170th some odd player in his class. It was just not a great quarterback class. So he was that, kind of mid 4-star type guy. Even though he was the top quarterback, that's where he was rated. Ryder's a 5-star through and through. Everybody's got him as a 5-star. He's a top 15 guy by every site. He's a top 10 guy by some sites. I mean, Ryder Lyons, BYU does not get to play in that 5-star pool very often. He is as highly touted as anybody that BYU has ever recruited.
Now, obviously, we don't know what his decision is going to be, but let's say, hypothetically say BYU lands his signature, gets his commitment. Would that open doors for other athletes, 4- and 5-star variety, that would say, hey, BYU, you want to talk to me about this? Would he have that type of a pull?
I think so, but it would look a little bit different than maybe BYU fans would want it to. I think there are some guys in this 2026 class like Kawe Akana, Jaron Pula. I think that Ryder Lyons would have some sway for sure. But because Ryder is going on a mission, and he said he's going to go on his mission in January, and he hopes to be back in time for that 2027 season, it really sets up BYU more for next year's recruiting class when they're recruiting a bunch of guys who are going to join at the same time as Ryder. That's where I think you'll start to see the difference. And then in some of the classes that have already passed us by, I don't think it's coincidental that Kalani Sitake has already announced while he's serving his mission in Colorado, he's already announced that he's signed with BYU, right? I don't think that was by accident. I think that BYU is very clearly trying to get as many guys as they can, announce them right now, convince Ryder to come. And then you've got missionaries coming home, transfer portal guys that will want to play with a big time dude like that. Just to kind of illustrate the impact, there were a lot of people that assumed that whether they flipped to BYU or somebody else, that the Pula twins are going to flip from UCLA. I think that a few months ago, that was a foregone conclusion. Well, UCLA adds a guy in Nico Iamaleava, who's a pretty big deal at quarterback. And now all of a sudden it's like, UCLA might hold on to those guys because who doesn't want to play with a guy like that? BYU's version of that would be Ryder Lyons. I mean, that's how good he is. People would come to Provo to play with that quarterback.
What do you think his best skill is as a quarterback?
He reminds me so much of Zach Wilson in the way that he plays the game. He's got a kind of swagger to him that a lot of quarterbacks just don't have. Look, he can make every throw. He's a great athlete. His ability to extend plays. He breaks tackles like a running back. He can get yards with his legs. He can do all of that stuff, but he's wired differently. I mean, his leadership and the way that guys around him level up their game as well. That's something that Zach Wilson brought to the table when he was at BYU, that everybody got better when they played with Zach. I think Ryder has that capability. And that feels like kind of a coach speaky answer, but I think that's the answer, that he just has this leadership trait to him and this confidence to him that when you play, it's that anytime, anywhere, any place stuff with Zach Wilson, right? That like BYU is never going to be intimidated by anybody. They're going to feel like they can go, whether it's, going into Tuscaloosa or hanging out in the Big 12 and competing for conference championships and going into the playoff. Ryder's going to bring a kind of confidence that not only is that possible, that's the expectation as long as he is there. And that's different. I mean, that is different than most BYU quarterbacks.
Well, I think everybody who watched Zach knows exactly what you're talking about. He carried himself differently. And we saw Zach kind of grow up because he was the youngest quarterback to ever start a game at BYU, did as a freshman. And like you could see him by the time he got to that 2020 season, to your point, Jeff, there was a swagger. There was just an air of confidence about him that, I don't care who you throw out there against me. I'm just going to go and do my thing. And if that's how Ryder carries himself, I think BYU fans will be very pleased to have him as a part of this program. Now, the other side of it is there have been detractors of Aaron Roderick and his quarterback recruiting and his track record. Does he change that whole dynamic, that whole narrative, if Ryder Lyons commits to BYU?
Yeah. I mean, yes. If you land one of the top guys ever, then you get a free pass for a little bit, a little while at least. But I also think that A-Rod's kind of got a bad rap. That I'm talking to our guy Robbie McCombs in basketball a few years ago, and he kept saying, as recruiting was kind of down, he kept saying, like, guys, BYU's recruiting pool just hasn't been what it needs to be. It is what it is. It sucks, but it is what it is. And that's a really hard answer to just accept, because it's like, no, it's a coach's job to go and find guys. Yeah, that's true, but it's tougher, right? It's a lot more challenging when you don't have that footprint stocked with talent. If you look at the quarterback spot and that traditional BYU quarterback, hasn't been that many recently. BYU missed on Jackson Dart. And other than that, there really hasn't been that big time guy that's either from the state of Utah or a member of the church that BYU could have gone out and got. I think now that's starting to change. You've seen A-Rod land a Bear Bachmeier. That's great. If he lands Ryder Lyons, that's phenomenal. And looking forward, there's a lot of guys who are members of the church who look like they're going to be pretty big-time quarterbacks. There's a Cajo brother who's looking pretty good. There's a couple of guys out of Hawaii that look pretty good. BYU just offered. He's also a fulsome teammate of Ryder's in Brody Rudnicki. He's going to be pretty good. It looks like BYU's quarterback options are also getting better. And so I would expect that you're going to see Aaron Roderick's success also go up quite a bit over the next few years.
Okay. So, and then A-Rod, his offenses have shown that they can adapt to different quarterbacks. Do you think they'd have to change a lot for Ryder? Would have to go back to more what Zach Wilson ran with BYU, where, he could run the football, but he preferred to make plays out of the pocket. Whereas Jaron Hall, Jake Retzloff, it's more of a dual threat, and they had more read options and that type of stuff. What do you think the offense would look like with a guy like Ryder?
Yeah, I think that, frankly, I think that the way Jake has developed under Aaron Roderick over the last year, it's kind of got BYU back into the game with Ryder Lyons, because I think a year and a half ago, BYU was an afterthought. They were on the outside. But the way that Jake got better and the way that he plays within this scheme, it's not too different than what Folsom runs and what Ryder Lyons is used to. Obviously, it's more complex. It's a college offense versus a high school offense. But from a skill set standpoint, Ryder uses his legs quite a bit. He goes and he makes big throws, big passes. There's lots of timing elements, things like that. It feels very similar. So I don't know that they would change a whole lot about the offense if Ryder Lyons came to BYU, but what I do think is that it would expand the capabilities of the offense, because as much as Jake has developed, there's still some limitations and some holes in his game. Ryder doesn't have those holes, at least right now. If he continues to develop, it doesn't look like he's going to have those same kind of holes. So I think it will be the same type of offensive foundation, and there will be a lot more wings in the house that they're able to build on.
All right. Well, the stakes are high, obviously, for him alone, but he's one of, 20 plus guys who are coming to campus this weekend. We get a kind of a more full view of what to expect of maybe the biggest recruiting weekend in recent memory for BYU football. And we'll do that with Jeff next, right here on a crossover edition with Locked On Cougars and Give Them Hell Brigham. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. In the NBA playoffs, we're going to a Game 7, everybody. There's been highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments throughout this entire NBA Finals. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action and do it with our friends over at FanDuel. Make it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, along with a bevy of other options. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big with our friends over at FanDuel. If you've got a read on who's heating up, potentially in Game 7 on Sunday night, why not back it up with the same game parlay? Or how could a $200 bonus in bets, $200 bonus in bets, add to the excitement? If your first $5 bet hits, I think it would add just a little extra fire and motivation to it. The best part is if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. And right now, FanDuel has up to $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. It's as simple as that. Head to FanDuel.com today and place your first $5 bet. Once again, if you win, $200 in your account just like that. Make every moment more with FanDuel, as they are an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Appreciate all of you for being with us. Back with Jeff Hansen from Give Him Hell Brigham, Cougar Sports Insider. You know him, you love him, you see him everywhere. He's on Wise Guys, he's on BYU Sports Nation. Jeff, you are like ubiquitous when it comes to BYU stuff. But I appreciate you carving out some time. But a huge weekend for BYU and recruiting. There's no other way to say it. With as many guys, with as many stars and ratings attached to their names, is this the biggest weekend in quite some time for BYU on the recruiting front?
I don't think it's a really difficult argument to say this is the biggest weekend in history. I mean, in the recruiting service history, I think for sure. Like, I don't know how big of the official visits were in the 80s and 90s. I have no idea. I can't speak to that. But since there have been recruiting networks and star rankings, I can't think of a bigger weekend. I mean, even going back to the 2010 class that had all those dudes, that was a great class. BYU had 4 or 5 guys that came on visits that were big time. BYU's got like 30 that are on the board right now. And a lot of them, I think upwards of 18, 19, 20 of them are going to come to campus next week. I don't want to be hyperbolic, but I don't think it's hyperbolic at all to say this is the biggest recruiting weekend in BYU football history.
Now, we've talked about Ryder Lyons, but you had guys like a Jax Tanner, who's out of Idaho. I think the number 2 recruit out of that state. He's got connections to BYU. He's bordering on 4-star status as an offensive lineman. He kind of screams to me, and I'll get your thought on this. He screams to me like the prototypical BYU lineman, just a tough, hard-nosed player that BYU succeeds with more often than not.
Yeah, Jax Tanner is legitimately elite. I think he will be a 4-star by the time all is said and done. It's hard for networks sometimes, especially early on when you're assigning those rankings, to look at a guy who plays in a small school in Idaho and he's dominating, but he's also a foot taller than everybody else on the field. It's a challenge, right? So I think there's some of that with Jax Tanner's rating. But if you look at his Final Four, Oregon was in the playoff, Tennessee was in the playoff, Michigan just won a national championship, and then there's BYU. Those are his Final Four schools. So he's big time. There's no question. And I agree with you, Jake. He's a guy that I'm trying to think of a good comp that he reminds me of, because he's an interior guy. I don't know. Is it a James Empey? I don't know, but he's just this physical specimen that just dominates. He plays the offensive line with the kind of attitude that you would want a defensive tackle to play with, that he's seeking out contact. He is quick off the line. He gets into his position and into his footing, and his footwork is phenomenal. He gets there really quickly. His hands are strong. He's violent. I love the way that Jax Tanner plays the game. I love the position that BYU's in to get him late, to get his last. He's expected to make a late June, early July decision. So to get his last visit before that decision, I think BYU's in a really, really strong position.
Well, the way you describe things, he kind of strikes me as a Bruce Mitchell, but far more advanced than Bruce, because Bruce was so much better than everybody else at the 2A level at South Summit. You're right. He was a foot taller and 40 pounds heavier than almost everybody. And Bruce played defensive tackle at BYU, didn't work out. They moved him to O-line, and he took to it right away, and he's going to be the starting center this year. So I think that might be, even though they're different levels of athlete, that might be the best comp for him in the way he approaches the game. Now, another name I wanted to run by you is a guy that I absolutely love, Legend Glasgow. Now, him and PJ Taki are both Lehigh High School guys, and Lehigh's got a really, really fantastic, trio, because you also include the running back. His name is escaping.
Devon Eka. Yeah.
Well, that trio, Lehigh is going to be a force in the 6A ranks this year, and they got two of them committed so far. Devon obviously has got an offer from BYU. Give me a sense, just in I guess for all three. I'll open up to all three of them for you. What's your evaluation of the Lehigh trio there?
Let's start with Devon Eka. He's maybe the guy that people don't talk about as much. And I have to be careful when I say this, because people are going to listen to the name and then they're going to run with it, and they're not going to get to the period of the sentence. So get to the full sentence, guys. Yeah. I see a lot of Jamal Williams with the way that Devon Eka plays the game. I mean, he's a big physical runner. And if you look at Jamal, I mean, as much as you remember breakaway runs and all that, physicality was the name of his game. He sought after contact. That was how he was successful. He wasn't the fastest guy on the field. He had good quickness, but not elite quickness. But he was big and fast enough and quick enough and big and big and big. And that's what made him powerful. I see a lot of that in Devon Eka. He runs kind of upright, looks like Jamal when he runs. The way that he cuts looks like Jamal. His vision and the way that he finds those lanes. I see a lot of Jamal Williams in the way that Devon Eka plays. But I'm not talking about Jamal Williams of the Detroit Lions, not that Jamal, but that Jamal that was running against Georgia Tech as a true freshman. That's the kind of Jamal that I think I see in Devon Eka right now. So I think he's a very, very good player. And then moving on to those other two, I think you could convince me that those are the two most underrated players in the state of Utah, and PJ Taki and Legend Glasgow. PJ is phenomenal. There was a game last year, Jake, in the playoffs that he had 3 sacks on 3 consecutive plays. I mean, he forced the 3 and out by himself. That's the kind of pass rusher that he is. He is the nephew of Sione Taki, who obviously everybody knows and remembers. And he plays a lot like him, but he does it from that true defensive end spot at Lehigh. He's must-see TV. I mean, go find a way to watch PJ Taki. And then Legend, man. I mean, Legend Glasgow, he played. He had some stuff he had to work through with transfer and eligibility and things like that last year. So he only played in the back half of the season. He was on pace for 2,000 receiving yards. This guy is unreal. He has some of the best hands that I've seen from a high school guy. He ran a legitimate laser-timed 4.42 this last spring, so as a junior. I mean, so he's got the speed. He's got all of the tools that you want. You just want to see more of him on the field, and he's healthy right now. He's going to be on the field. He's going to be a part of a really fun Lehigh offense under Coach Hadfield. I think you're going to see a lot of Legend Glasgow. He just got bumped up from an 84 to an 87. I think that continues to rise. A lot of talk about Jaron Pula from Timpview, and he deserves it. Legend Glasgow deserves to be mentioned in that same breath. He's every bit the player that Jaron Pula is.
Now, he made a big splash when he already committed. Brock Harris out of Pineview High School. Oof. Looks like just a thoroughbred. And I had a member of the BYU staff last year when he came to summer camp said, Jake, you put a college uniform on him for us right now, he probably starts a tight end for us. And he's a 17-year-old junior at the time. And I'm like, you're serious? Like, yeah, dead serious. And he has proven to be that. And I don't think people realize how big of a pickup he really is.
I don't think so. And it's easy. It's easy to forget about a guy playing at Pineview. I mean, Pineview's not a powerhouse down there in St. George. It's not Crimson Cliffs. They're not playing for state championships.
Mm-hmm.
So it's easy to kind of forget about Brock Harris once high school football starts. But people shouldn't, man. I mean, he's different. He is an off the bus guy that as soon as you see him, you're like, holy cow, that's a dude. Legitimate NFL talent already. It's up to BYU to develop that talent, to figure out how to use it. But that's his trajectory. That's where Brock Harris is headed. A lot of people will say he's the best tight end in the country. I don't know if he's the best, if he's the fifth best. I don't know if it matters. He's going to be a dynamic football player at BYU. A lot has been said about why BYU doesn't use the tight end spot. And I think that it's fair, but I think there's a reason for it. And mostly because BYU hasn't had a tight end who really commands the ball since, Isaac Rex before he got hurt. It's been a really long time. And even a guy like Reiner Swanson last year, who was a very good tight end and has his own very, very bright future, he was raw, right? I mean, he was raw. He didn't, I don't think he was quite ready as a blocker last year. I mean, he still looked like a freshman. Brock Harris doesn't. I mean, he's already an elite blocker. He's got the elite size. If you look at him, you kind of think you might make the mistake and be like, yeah, he looks a little bit lanky. He's like 250 pounds, but he's just so built. It looks a little bit lanky. I mean, he's got everything that you want. He could absolutely play at the college level today. He's very good.
Yeah, he carries it very well because you're right. You look at him like he's a little skinny. No, he's legit. He's got the weight on him. There's no doubt. Okay, last thing for me, Jeff. We've barely scratched the surface of how many guys are visiting, but is there maybe another name or two out there that in this group that's visiting this weekend that you're most excited about?
Well, a couple of guys on the defensive line that kind of have flown under the radar in the midst of all of these big names and recruiting stars that I'm really excited about. The first one is Nehemiah Kalani out of I think he's out of Oklahoma City. I don't know, somewhere in Oklahoma, maybe Stillwater.
You mean the guy that BYU legend was tampering with Justin Kirkland when they?
That's the one. He's more than just a wedge into somebody else. No, Kalani can play, man. I mean, he's already 260 pounds. He's another guy, kind of like Brock. He doesn't look like it, but he's built really well. He's got a big frame. I think he projects as a true defensive tackle at the next level. He's got a bunch of Big 12 schools on him. He's been on I think Michigan State, so some Big 10 interest as well. Very, very good player. And frankly, just the kind of defensive tackle that the BYU fans have said they wanted, and we haven't been able to see over the last few years. I think that's what Nehemiah Kalani is. So I'm excited to see him. And then another defensive tackle in Lopeti Mwala. He went by Junior Mwala last year and played at Davis. Now he's Lopeti Mwala and he's playing at Orem, but he's still the same really, really good player. At Orem, he's going to line up in a couple of different spots because he's so athletic. He's a very good basketball player. Won the state championship with Davis last year on the basketball floor. So he's very athletic and moves really well. But there's zero question that he's going to be a three-tech defensive tackle. Plays at 310 pounds at the next level. He's big. He's strong. His lower half is unreal. I mean, he's just built in a way that I think screams really dominant defensive lineman. I think he could play. I think he could fit gaps. I think he could shoot gaps. I think he could do everything he needs to do. And I think BYU's in a really, really good spot. So I'm excited to see how he develops at Orem. Orem's going to be really good this year in 5A, folks. So go see Orem play. But I'm excited to see what Lopeti Mwala does and how he develops.
All right. Well, Jeff, I cannot thank you enough for all the time you've spent breaking things down for us, but encourage everyone once again, go and download Jeff's preview. It's an incredible thing. It gives you breakdowns of literally every opponent, names to know for these opponents, coaching staff, philosophy. You covered it from every angle, my man.
No, I appreciate it. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun. And it's a magazine that my whole goal going into it is it's a magazine that is more than just you look at it once and put it down, that it is something that is worthwhile for 4 months. I hope we've delivered that. I think that we've been able to.
Well, I will make sure to drop a link in the show notes as well as in the comments section on YouTube so people can find it pretty easy. Download it, enjoy it on your summer vacations, and get ready for the upcoming football season. But Jeff, as always, thank you for carving out some time to join us here on Locked On Cougars.
Appreciate it, Jake.
Big thank you once again to Jeff Hansen. Make sure you check out his BYU preview, 130 plus pages of all BYU preseason content. It's an incredible value in my opinion. Check it out today if you have not done so already. But coming up next, we talk about what you want to talk about. Our Locked On Cougars Insider Group, they have responded in mass with their mailbag questions. We're getting to those next, right here on Locked On Cougars. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. If you want to be a part of our weekly mailbag session, you need to be a part of the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. Best part is just $5 a month to be a part of the group. And the kicker is you get a 14-day free trial to see if it's the right option for you guys. The best part is those updates come to your phone in the form of a text message. Don't get much more direct than that. And the best part is you're not having to log onto a website, go to a message board to get the inside intel that you crave. So join us today on the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. Link is in the show notes below, or reach out to us and we'll get you squared away. All right, time for your guys' questions. Some of these have been delayed for over a week because we didn't get a show in last Friday, so apologies for that. But a number of them were related to Ryder Lyons. Preston, let's see, DJ, man, there's a few of them here, essentially asking the same question. If you were a betting man, Jake, what would the odds be that we managed to land Ryder Lyons? That's essentially the question that a lot of people want to know. I have maintained, and I've told the Insiders Group this, they know this, is that I maintain it's a 50-50 proposition as of recording of this podcast. Could that flip in the coming days? Absolutely, it could. But as of recording this podcast, Friday, June 20th, we're 4 days away from his official announcement. Speaking of Ryder Lions, I think it's a 50-50 proposition between Oregon and BYU. Could that change? Absolutely, it could, and fully expect it will change because it's not going to be 50-50 in the end. It's going to be 100 one way or the other. So I think the thing is, we're looking at a really interesting situation to see if that final visit, if that lasting impression of the final official visit he makes, if it can put BYU over the top, and we're all going to find out. Brandon with a great question here. My buddy said he saw AJ DeBonsa at Disneyland. What's the weirdest place you've seen a current or former BYU athlete? Ooh, that's a good question. Actually, I can answer that question for you. Taiwan. Serving a mission, I actually ran into a guy who was running track for BYU at the time. He had come back to visit Taiwan. So if you want to count that, I don't remember the kid's name. I apologize, but I met him randomly. He stopped us on the streets when I was serving as a missionary. Other places I've seen people. I've seen athletes at Disneyland. Yes. I've seen guys at SeaWorld. So there's a few different things out there. So there you go, Brandon. Tyson, you're the AD for the day, athletic director for the day. How are you allocating the $20.5 million revenue share? What percentage is going to football? What percentage goes to other priority sports? And do all players on the team get the same amount, or is the distribution weighted on performance? Well, percentage going to football in my book is 80%, maybe 85%. I would give 10% to men's basketball, and then other 5 to 10% goes to the other sports in the athletic department. And that's nothing against the other sports in BYU's athletic department. It's revenue share. What are the two sports that generate the revenue? Well, it's men's basketball and football. Those deserve the lion's share of the revenue, in particular football, because it drives the ship, as Brian Santiago likes to say. Do all players on the team get the same amount? Absolutely not. You approach this the way that BYU is approaching it, and it's like an NFL salary cap. Quarterbacks, left tackles, defensive ends, priority positions are worth more. And yes, if you're a starter or in the 2 deep, you make more than if you're a walk-on, maybe 3rd or 4th string. It's just, I know that we want to talk about like parity and everybody's equal. Doesn't exist in this circumstance. You pay the best players the most amount of money, because if you don't, guess what? They're going to leave. And that's the problem with it. Travis, what is NIL? Well, Travis, to simply put it, it's money being paid to you for use of your name, image, or likeness as an athlete. So if you want, a company wants you to represent their product, they pay you for that. They want your face on a billboard, they pay you for that. They want you to endorse a product, your name is attached to an endorsement, they're paying. It's essentially any promotional deal that a company wants to pay you for. That's what NIL is, in the short and sweet sentence for you guys. Let's see other questions here. Would you consider getting one of the basketball players on as a regular for your show, as you did with Connor Pace? That comes from Eric. Eric, I would, but as I've said before, I'm still kind of waiting out to see what this NIL go and the House settlement, how it all kind of shakes out. I'm not even sure we're going to have a football guest quite yet at this point. I would hope to have it happen, but obviously I just need to kind of let things kind of settle. And once we get past July 1st, when that fully goes into effect, see what it looks like. And if it's going to be a pain in the you-know-what, maybe we bypass it and say, hey, it was great while we had it, but hey, if it works out, I would love to have it, because Connor he's been awesome. And Connor's still a really, really dear friend. I actually talked with him just yesterday about a thing. He's a good dude, and he actually mentioned he needs to come back on the podcast. We'll see what we can do to get him back on the show. A couple other questions, and obviously these are going to hold over, I think, from last week as well. Parley, let's see, Ethan asked this as well. Questions about Jake Retzloff and his status. Mum's the word, for lack of a better term. I don't know what to tell you guys beyond that, because quite frankly, I have no updates. I don't think anybody has updates on Jake Retzloff, nor I don't think we should expect that. Now, BYU does have their annual media golf tournament on Monday. You can expect that Kalani Sitake will be asked the question in some form or fashion, and I expect essentially a no comment or referring back to the BYU statement when the lawsuit officially first went down, because it's kind of where they kind of have to just let it sit for now. I hope they would have an answer at some point, but we'll see what happens here. It's just a very interesting situation all the way around here. Let's see other questions here. So this goes back to last week when we talked about the release of the men's basketball Big 12 schedule. BYU going to West Virginia for the 3 years in a row. A couple of you asking about that. Is it appeasing West Virginia? Maybe in some ways it is, but a couple of you out there, I know that Tyler Bergen and some other guys who are out on the East Coast, it's a great opportunity for you guys to get up to West Virginia and watch BYU play. So yeah, I'd like to see West Virginia play in the Marriott Center one day, but for now, it's a great opportunity for our East Coast friends, speaking of Cougar fans out on the Eastern Seaboard, to go and watch the Cougars play. And that seems to be a rarer and rarer occurrence, because BYU isn't playing all over the country like they did once upon a time as an independent football program. All right, other questions coming in. Let's finish up with some ones that are off the beaten path. All right, here we go. John, we got to know your fast food burgers power rankings 1 through 5. And here are the 5 options he gives me: Wendy's, Arctic Circle, JCW's, McDonald's, and Burger King. Wow. Okay. Well, let's put it this way. Number 1 for me, I'm going JCW's, putting on for the hometown restaurant. It's not hometown, but I've been eating at JCW since they had their original restaurant in American Fork. I love JCW's hamburgers. They could be an advertiser on here if they want to be. Reach out. We'll get you squared away, but they're not for the time being. I just love me a JCW's burger. In particular, I am a huge fan of that Hawaiian burger. Just a little word to the wise. I love the Hawaiian burger, but I actually have them put the pineapple on the side, because I've had that pineapple attack me so many times falling out of the burger, and I have had many a shirt ruined as a result. But that's okay. That's number 1, JCW's. Number 2 of these 5, it's McDonald's. I am a McDonald's kid, born and raised. So McDonald's is number 2. Number 3 is Wendy's for me. Number 4, ooh, man, I'm going to go Arctic Circle, because much like many of you out there, I grew up in the state of Utah, and Arctic Circle is just a part of my childhood. My wife laughs at the notion, because I don't know how many of you know this. I'm the oldest of 7 kids in my family, and they still have it to this day, but it's not the same as it used to be. Many of you might recall, some of you don't maybe, they used to have what they called their bag of burgers at Arctic Circle. It was a mixture of both hamburgers and cheeseburgers. They had like 10 or so in this big old bag at least. And my parents would buy those, and that's what we would have for dinner some nights. It was a bag of burgers. So it's Arctic Circle for me, and the number 5 Burger King. Burger King's never been my favorite thing out there. And then Landon also asked this: rank the Whopper, Big Mac, and Dave's Single. The Whopper with cheese, obviously. Of those 3, number 1, Big Mac. Number 2, Dave's Single, and number 3, the Whopper. I think it's easy for me. I will say this: if you give me a Baconator from Wendy's, that may be number 1. Just saying, I do love me a Big Mac, but that Baconator, man, that's a delicious sandwich. Probably revealing way too much about how much I know about fast food, but that's a story for another day. But that is going to do it for today's edition of the podcast. A huge thank you once again to Jeff Hansen for lending us more time to join us here on the podcast. It's always good to talk with him, and many of you have said, hey, you need to do that more with Jeff. I will endeavor to do so. I'll endeavor to do it more with other media members that I'm well acquainted with as well. But hey, a big thank you to all of you. Have a great weekend. It's supposed to go from, it was 100 degrees plus yesterday here in Utah. It's supposed to hit 70 by Sunday. my body's not going to be sure what it's going to do with itself. But nonetheless, enjoy the, I guess, cold snap if you're in the state of Utah, but enjoy your weekend overall, no matter where you might be. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And thank you once again for being everydayers right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.